Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Linda Bradley,
Monday, yeah.
and I'm chair of the Document Review Committee. We're going to start our meeting, and I'm calling it to order at 3:01 p.m. Roll call. There's only 3 of us on the committee, and we are all present. And I would like to amend the agenda and add an item right here. I forgot that I needed to add that we need to approve the minutes from our 3:20 meeting. Does anyone have any corrections or any objections to the minutes at all?
I didn't. I'm good with them.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you so much. So then the next item on the agenda is some follow-up information on the ACC policies we did. And I'm just gonna kind of read from the minutes. The one that we did, the policy 1996.17, Morgan followed up on this. And when new bills come in, somebody does a check with Gil to make certain that people are in good standing. So it's something that I'm not gonna worry about too much, and I think we can rescind it, and we discussed that already. Then there's policy 1996-21, and that's where we're supposed to be publishing a statement. Joanne has had that question out to our attorney for a long time. He's in mediation and stuff right now and no union negotiations. And so we're just waiting to hear back. So that's going to be a hold until we get some kind of definite answer to that question. On policy 1998-01, like the ACC policy, we discussed rescinding this. It's there. Tomorrow night at the board meeting, there's a huge, and it's on the website if you're interested, there's a huge, they are redoing the ACC policies. And they've made some significant changes, but all of that's discussed there. Then there is policy 2001.03 and 2006.3. It's a policy that deals with over-the-counter approvals. And actually, I thought we were going to have to keep this, but there's something, and I hope to discuss and have them just simply added a little bit in the updated ACC manual. And if they do, these 2 things can be rescinded because it gives the general manager the authority to approve it. And I also added in there, because they had it in another spot, that if not the general manager, then a designated staff, administrative staff person. And if that's in there, that's all that we need. We don't have a construction manager or anything like that right now. So I think that will, if I can ask them to make that little bitty change, I think that we can go ahead and rescind them. Then the last one is policy 2018.03. And it's there. It's the contractor's rules, and they have added that whole section. I went and looked today for sure to make sure that they had placed it in the ACC manual. So hopefully, if it's approved tomorrow night, although it's a lot of reading, and I understand there's going to be a really good presentation done by the ACC chair explaining the changes and stuff, that hopefully it'll just get passed, and then we can bring these to the board and ask them to rescind, and we'll be all done with it. And I'm really hoping that that's what we can do. So our meeting this time is for some specific board-specific policies that are on the books. And the first one is a contract policy. And other than some really awful typos, and misspellings a little bit, I think it's still the same. There's some sections that I have a little bit of concern about. Under the second highlighted section on the first page is for contracts 10,000 or more. Down in there, it says the contract must be signed by SVCA board president and the board secretary, or in their absence by an authorized board officer. Now, the officers all have signing authority. When you're put on the board and after the executive committee is formed, you have a form that you fill out with the banks, and we're the only ones that have authority. So we're gonna have to do a little bit of finessing with this subcontracting policy. Then there's the next highlighted thing down for less than 10,000 for the contract terms. It says that the general manager shall be authorized to approve them. And normally she doesn't have that now unless the board, even when she wants to do a fairly large request out of operational funds, we simply give her the okay to have it signed. Things like we recently did a thing for our reserve specialist. So I think this probably needs to be restated better than it is. But other than that, then on the very last page of that, there's a couple of things. There's the actual last paragraph. It says $10,000 was selected as the dollar amount because that's the dollar amount defining check signatures for operational expenses. Checks of 10,000 or more require 2 board officer signatures. And then it says checks of less than 10,000 require 2 staff signatures. That doesn't happen any longer. So there's a little bit of work needs to get done on that. And then the very last sentence, it refers to Phil Sharp, but I think it might be, it says to consider a contract template. We have one. Do we need to insert it in here?
Think so.
Think we should?
Yeah, I think so. But it's all together.
Yeah, that's true. Then it's there and nobody can say, yeah. Because Joanne puts a lot of them in there. Sometimes I know one got dumped into the packet this time that we have. And I've told her if it's just that's our standard contract that has all the language in it, it's not a big deal to me that she doesn't put it in there. If there's something special that has to be changed to our normal terms, then I would expect her to put it in there and point it out to us. All righty.
So Linda,
Go
since
ahead.
since this is Jean, since I was in the financial committee for a couple of years ago when the things had happened. And I guess I'm a little confused. I don't know if I bring this up now or not, but this does say that capital purchases which have been previously that have been approved by the finance committee of $10,000. So here it says, here I understand that anything over $10,000 of a capital expense should be approved by the finance committee, along with the board of directors.
Yeah.
In that highlighted area, right?
Yeah.
In the bylaws, it says that the finance committee assists the board in decision making. So this one makes it sound like this is definitively what's supposed to happen. And the bylaws says that, well, the finance committee is an assistant committee. So it's confusing to me. What is really the role of the finance committee in this situation?
How do I say it? Ideally, and in the past, and you're gonna probably agree with me 5,000%. Any capital requests automatically go to the finance committee. They look at everything and say, you know, discuss it and stuff. And they might not always agree with everything that's in there. They had a thing recently with the tennis courts because the bid was so much over what was in the reserve study. They said that they would approve it, that they would recommend it to be approved, but that they didn't just say, yes, we recommend this. They wanted to go and speak with Joel and make sure that, yeah, this is over the amount we have, but is it okay? And there's enough in SURF that we can go forward with the project.
Right.
And
Okay.
so we had to put it off one board meeting, but we then approved it. It was still, finance is doing due diligence, and that's nice to see.
Mhm.
I think that there's a lot to be said for that to be done. And I think there's, if, how do I say it? If, let's say the finance committee goes, you know, I really don't recommend this, then they can do that with the understanding that when it's brought forward to the board, that the treasurer will say, you know, we can't recommend this. It's still up to the board of directors to decide, do they agree with the finance committee or do they want to go ahead and approve it,
Okay.
a request?
Okay.
So it's like,
really, well, the finance committee is still an advisory sort of committee. It's not,
Yes.
even though this says that capital expenditures would be previously approved by the finance committee, that's not necessarily necessary to do that.
how do I say, you know, it isn't, how do I say, it isn't necessary. Although it's an extra step, I think that there are times when you don't have some differing people looking at things, that stuff can get overlooked.
Yeah, no, I think it's all good. I'm just saying my sort of question is the wording okay in this document, considering that the finance committee is just an advisory role according to our bylaws?
Yeah,
And I
What
guess
if you change, sorry, Jean, what if you change the word approved to previously, trying to think of the word, I'm still working on.
considered or reviewed, I don't know.
Or, yeah, or previously reviewed by the finance committee. Changed approved to reviewed, that way it makes sure that the finance is brought to the committee first, but it still gives the board the authority, should they choose to not follow that
Yeah.
recommendation.
I think that's fine. Like I say, there's tons of work to be done on this document all by itself.
Yeah, sorry to bring it, it's just,
No, it's a good point.
it was something I was involved in. I was never sure how much power the finance, what the role of the finance committee really was in a lot of ways. And I think it's confusing between this document and the bylaws, but I understand how it works and how it's supposed to work. I'm just saying the language is a little confusing between the two documents.
And it's nice if the policy kind of refers back to the bylaws,
Right.
because then you're tying this policy, you're saying, you know, that this is the policy and you're spelling it out more than in the bylaws, but then we should also be including finance somewhere in this rather than just saying, oh, well.
Right, right.
What was interesting that I came across and went, oh, really? Is on the second page of this. At the bottom, it talks about multi-year contracts.
Oh, yeah.
It says, this should be added to the board secretary's duties. And I'm like, oh, really? But when you read what that does for continuity, I tend to agree with that. And I think it almost should be something that when the new board, because it says in October of every year, the outgoing board secretary will prepare a contract list to be provided to the board in their November board packet. This list will identify all contracts that are in effect for the following years, a summary of the goods, services, ... And you know, that's not dumb, because it's like, there's sometimes currently, you find out about it when the general manager starts working. I don't know that there is a list. And I would like to find out, is there a list? Or if there isn't, I certainly am all for creating that list. We have one coming up to be approved with the Linden Tribune, a continuing, it's an addendum. You know, we've had them for forever and ever and a day to do our stuff. But, and pretty soon, if I'm not mistaken, the library lease is gonna be coming forward too. And it would be nice, once the new board is formed, to have a discussion about that, because the whole board, everybody should know, and there should be a list, and if there isn't, then it's time to revisit that all over again and get some dates on things. There's, how do I say it? There's some things that are goods and services. Our pool contract only goes for a year, but that's an expensive contract. The company that manages our pools and stuff. And it's to see what contracts, and that's something maybe we all look at. What do we consider to be contracts that should be included? You know, we have large projects in capital sometime, or in roads that cover multi-years. But it's like, that's all, you see those amounts and you see where they are in process. And basically, if they're a capital project recognized in SURF or in roads, that's a capital expense, they're just simply in there until the money's expended. If it takes 3 years, it takes 3 years. Take a look at the launch dock, folks.
Yes.
So there's that sort of thing where I think we need to define which contracts that we really need to make sure we get a list of.
So somebody has said that they think accounting has a list. It popped up in the chat.
Yeah, I think Morgan probably put that in. Thanks, Morgan.
What, who, huh?
I think Morgan typed in that there's, as Jean pointed out, that someone in accounting has a list of those.
Oh, all right. I can talk with, I'll get with Nikki.
Well, it would be good to have that one as an incoming board, because, you know, some years we have more new board members than others, and this
Yep.
year, this coming one, we're gonna have lots of new board members.
Yep, absolutely. And
Potentially.
they should have a heads up right away as to what's going on. And it's probably going to be the general manager or somebody. You know, I'm still going to be on next year. I don't know that I'm going to be secretary. I might just be a regular board member. So we'll see what we see.
Yeah.
Okay, but we will look into that. Thank you for telling me that somebody has that, and we'll see what the list is. And at least when we come back next time, we can discuss it. But we should look at maybe rewording some of this in the meantime and doing something back and forth to see if we can get a finished document by the next time we meet. So next policy is board orientation, 2010.08. And it's usually a good meeting. We used to do them all in person. It'd be nice to get back to that again. Usually the insurance person comes. Sometimes I think the parliamentarian that we have now usually joins us and does a presentation via Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
But about the only thing that's in here that I don't know if it needs to be in here is it says discuss the board governance philosophy in John Carver's book, Boards That Make a Difference, book provided. Well, we don't do that anymore. Although it would be nice to have something about the board's governance philosophy, but I don't know if that's doable or not. We now again have a code of conduct. We're gonna all sign, or most of us, they're gonna be handed out. It finally got finalized at our last board meeting. And it's on the agenda for this board meeting to sign and submit. And it sounds like the board secretary gets to keep those. I don't know about that, but somebody needs to keep them on file at admin. Because if there's any change or there's new board members that are appointed during the year, then they should be given one and stuff to fill out once they become a member of the board. Additionally, it says each new member will be requested to undertake a tour of the Sudden Valley. And it says with the security chief, and it shouldn't be, it should just be undertake a tour of Sudden Valley to familiarize the member with Sudden Valley environs, including the community center and the health club. I may want to change that a little bit to the facilities and stuff and what's going on. We had a really good tour this year. And
We
even
did.
though I've taken 2 or 3 of them, that was a really good, it will be really good to do. It also says then the responsible person, the board secretary, should be responsible for ensuring timely completion of this orientation requirement. I don't know about that, but I guess I'm learning all along that the board secretary gets to do lots of things.
Lucky you.
No, lucky.
Is there a handbook for each of the positions, like the board secretary, and would that be included in it?
Pardon, what did you say, Jean?
Or is there a job description or a handbook for the positions like secretary and what all their duties are so that they
How
can?
do I say it? I think there's a thing called best practices that spells out what a secretary does, what the vice president does, what the president does, what the treasurer does. I think there is that sort of thing.
There is a really general description on the website in the
Under the
bylaws.
bylaws, you're right. You're right, there is something in the bylaws, but like you say, it's very general.
Yeah, it's not detailed at all, but it does give an overview.
I just thought it would help for the new people taking like a secretary, these are the things that you're responsible for. And because like you said, Linda, you didn't know this is really your job or somebody else's, and defining that helps the people coming in.
And I think, and Jean, that's a point. I think sometimes we lose that. When we lose with the turnover of staff, we lose corporate memory. And Morgan and I have started working on stuff together that's just, it's just finding that person. Is there enough staff that one person can give us time, like Morgan can give us time to be our host right now out of the other things that she does. And it's like, it's nice to have, but I think sometimes a lot of this is lost. And it's maybe, when all is said and done, there's maybe another list needs to get made. When I read all this, it's like, well, nobody told me that.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, moving on to 2017.3, director and committee chair requests for records and other information. Some of this has been changed a little bit by the changes in 2 state laws. Mostly it deals with any member of the association, but even our bylaws say that any director has access to the records. It's like you can't be denied them. And I think the only thing in the policy that bothers me is that it says the board president, the treasurer, or a committee chair may request information directly from the general manager or designee. I wish they'd add the vice president and the secretary. If we're all executives, we should have a little bit more latitude, I think.
Agreed.
It's like if I'm supposed to know where all the records of the association are, there's times where you have to go digging.
Yeah, no, I agree too. I agree with both of you.
And it's like one of the things that has been made really clear by the changes in state law is that sometimes people request stuff, but it's not a record of the association. And they've gone to great lengths to define what a record is. You know, you can ask, I can ask for a general ledger. That's a record of the association. If I ask for someone to summarize or sort or do that, that's going beyond asking for a record. If they supply me with the general ledger, then if I want to work with it, then I need to work with it. If I need it in a working format, I might have to ask for it in Excel format rather than a PDF. But it's like there's a limit to what a record is. And I think that's been confusing all along. Also, if it takes time for staff to look up records, let's say somebody wants something from a year ago or 2 years ago, some of our financial records, that takes a while to dig out.
So can that be defined in here, what a record is, along with adding the other positions, the other executive positions?
I will send state law that has, and we've got another place where it deals with it, but what is a record? I will, because I think in the one, this has been superseded, and I think the one that superseded it has that information in it, and I may just send that to you, Jean, and then you'll understand that it's there already.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Okay.
as long as it can, you know, yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay, but I'll look, and I think it's in there more, and I think there's a great deal more information in there than just this. So anyway, next on the agenda is 2017.5. And this is, once again, it has to do with the board basically is supposed to deal with governance. Committee chairs, sometimes having work been done N&E a lot, there's times where you really need to be able to have a staff person that you work with and be able to direct that staff person rather than, and maybe that arrangement just needs to be made ahead of time with the general manager, you know, to sit down and say, you know, this is what I'd really like, because the policy says no director other than the president shall direct the general manager to initiate any action, project, or study without prior approval of the president or prior board direction. And the individual directors may not intervene. And I get that, but there's times where you need staff to help you with the things you need to do. That happens a lot with N&E once we get out of the, well, actually when we get into, because once we get into accepting candidates and stuff, that's when it gets really, they get, you know, candidates submit their applications to the administration, and they need to date stamp, they need to inform the committee chair what's going on. They've been doing an excellent job of it with the openings that we have had just within the vacancies. But once again, it's time that's taken up where it's something that needs to be looked at. But other than that, I think it's a good idea, because sometimes people can get really conflicting direction. I know long-range planning, they actually have in the bylaws and in their job that that a staff person is actually given to that committee. I think it's the only committee that has that in their that's actually in the bylaws, where the board basically appoints a staff person to be specifically working with the long range planning committee. But other than that, I guess I see that, you know, we have exceptions to the rule. But at least that way, you know what you're doing, and you know that if that's the person they're working with, then if something comes up, that's what you do. If they're absent, then it would be up to the general manager. Let's say somebody takes a week of vacation and long-range planning's in the middle of doing a big project and they need stuff done. Then it would fall back on the general manager to assign a different staff person that would have to be temporarily assigned to do that work if somebody took the time off. But other than that, it's like I say, there's some of this that I think that we look at, and I think most of this is reasonable. You know, if somebody just comes in and goes, make me 50 copies of something, well, you know, it's like, it's hard. I feel bad when I ask for my written copy of the agendas all the time. But if they could see what they look like when I get done with them, Timmy knows what they look like. I have scribbling all over them, but at least I can tell you most of the time I can tell you everything. But it's just, I think it's a good policy. I don't think it's a bad policy. I don't know if we'll, you know, take a look at it some more before we get back and see, you know, is there, you know, anything that, you know, that would be that we need to add to this in any way? I don't think there is.
Oh, I thought it looked good.
Yeah.
I think it's an important policy because, you know, board members coming in don't always understand that they can't just go in and be asking for things. It's important for them to understand that.
I know, I'll give a for instance. So at the last board meeting, a gentleman submitted a whole sheaf of documents that had to do with short-term rentals. And I looked at it, I thought, I'm not going to do all this scanning into one PDF. So I got a hold of Max at the front desk and asked him if the copier down there scanned. And he said, yes, it does. So I took my papers down there, and I was going to just put it on a jump drive, but it doesn't save to that. It has to save to a staff person. So he sent it to his email address there. And then I gave him the jump drive. I didn't intend on that, but am I interfering in his work flow? Yes, I was. But I did it because it was interesting. There was a court case, some other documents about state law, about short-term rentals. And I felt that not just the executives, but the whole board needed to look at this packet of information. And so, but it's just, I try not to do that. I try to let Morgan know way ahead of time to go ahead and always make me an agenda packet. But I try and keep it to a minimum, or I'll ask her when we can sit down and look at something together where it fits with her workflow rather than me just going in and demanding her time. So I think we all need to be mindful of that. I have watched all these people with all their many hats that they wear all day long. Okay, last but not least, and I don't think there's anything we can do with this other than read it. It's policy 2018.04. This came about, and I think it follows state and federal law. There's also a grievance process, although there's one in here that is just that we just recently approved that I need to get copies of for Morgan to actually put on the website under the policies. That's for the code of conduct we recently approved and the grievance procedure. The thing with some of this stuff is it really deals strictly only with federal law. And sometimes if you file something under this, it have to be a protected class. And I think somebody at one time used this harassment policy. And the letter ended up coming back from the attorney that they weren't in a protected class, and so it's very narrow, the scope of this. Sounds like it's much the same if you read a lot of it, but it really spells out some things that aren't spelled out in the current grievance process that we have just for committees and the board. And there's so much that's much more in alignment with federal and state laws, that sort of thing, that govern this sort of thing in the workplace. And when we originally did this, I don't believe we had anything on our books. There's another one that's very much like this that has to do with volunteers, and there's another one that has to do just with staff. And we'll be coming across that too. It's just, I came across this because it was just in the section for the board. But hopefully, when we set our next meeting, I will know more tomorrow night if the ACC gets its policies approved. But once they do, I would like to put together the ACC policies we'd like to have rescinded. I still have to wait on the one about that publication that we're supposed to do in the views that has to do with encroachments and vacancies and that sort of thing. I don't know where that came from. It's old enough. I can't find anywhere it's ever been published at all. So I'm kind of just waiting until Rich tells us what's going on. But I would like to, at our next meeting, we'll know more, and hopefully I can bring something forward for us to look at where we actually want to propose to make a formal request to propose to rescind the ACC documents. Keep taking a look at these that I gave you. Like I say, there's some of these that definitely require some wordsmithing. And it's just a matter of doing it and adding some of this. I'll ask for the contract template from Joanne that we wanted to add to the policy on contracting policy, and also add some language in there for recognizing the finance committee and stuff. I also want to, there's some language that needs to come out of this because it's just not relevant. There's some other ones. I may do a quick edit with some of these and do with track changes and send them to you guys to look at. And
Yeah,
I promised Jean that I'll send, and I can send to Timey too, the updated policy that's based on the changes in state law that just happened, I think this year or last year.
Last year,
Yeah.
2023.
Yeah. To send you that, we'll look at that and say, well, this is what it says now. And is that sufficient? I just got this because I think if we choose to rescind it, it's already kind of lined out in the policies. It can just go away. It still gets saved in a master file, but it doesn't have to be on that list any longer to confuse people. So I think I don't have anything else other than asking you all when we can have our next meeting. What looks good? I know Wednesdays are good for Jean, are you, anybody away in May?
No, I'm not traveling anywhere as far as I know for anytime soon.
So,
I should be here.
let's see, so we're here. How about we try? Could we do the Wednesday, the 15th at 3 p, our regular time now? And
That works.
if
Yeah,
that
yeah.
way, if somehow the ACC thing gets, people go, no, I need to read it first, that gives them another one board meeting. If we meet on the 15th, then we can, if that gets approved, I can put something together that's an actual memo to the board to be approved to rescind the ACC stuff, if we could do that.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Oh, excellent. This is going better than better. Okay, 5:15 at 3 p.m. Anybody got anything else they want to talk about? I'm kind of all done here. Otherwise, we can just call for adjournment.
I'm good.
I'm
Jane,
good.
you have anything?
I've got, no, I'm good.
Okay, well, seeing that we have finished conducting our business, I call for us to adjourn at 3:43 p.m.
All right.
right.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you,
Okay,
Linda.
thank you so much.